Hey, everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you again today for a very special live Art of Spider-Man retrospective video. Today, we have a lot of really cool stuff for you guys, and that's why we want to do this as a live video to really emphasize how important and special this issue that we're going to talk about is. Today, we're going to be looking at issue number 38 of The Amazing Spider-Man. And this issue is the last issue that is plotted and drawn by co-creator Steve Ditko. And so not only did I want to bring this to you to review in this format, but I also wanted to bring on my friend who is a super historian, super fan, and a incredible fountain of knowledge, Mr. Nick Caputo. Nick, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure to be on here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I knew as this was coming up that I wanted to make this something special, and I knew you were the guy that I wanted to talk to about this issue because with so much going on, not just in the book, but behind the scenes, I really wanted to bring a lot of context to the fans as to what was happening here with issue number 38 of The Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, always enjoy talking about the work of Ditko, so I'm glad I could be here.
So what we're going to do for anybody who is joining us, whether you're joining us live or you're watching this on replay, we are going to be looking at this issue on a PDF copy. So what we back in 2004, Marvel Comics was able to get a hold of all of these original issues and actually physically scan them and save them to PDF files, which they then put on CD-ROMs. So they came out in a stack of CD-ROMs that you could put into your computer and view these old issues. And that's what we have here today. So as we go through this, you're going to see like the cover, it's a little worn, it's a little torn. There's yellowing of the pages. You're also going to see a lot of the original ads in the book and how that was laid out in terms of the page turns versus where the ads were placed, all that. So you're going to really get the feel as to what it was like if you had picked up this issue off the magazine stand back in the 60s. So without further ado, let me go ahead. Nick and I are going to kind of slide to the side. Yep. We're going to put up the issue here and we are going to review it together. And again, as I said, if you are here and joining us live, I'll try to check comments throughout the video as much as I can. So if you have something you'd like to share about the issue, let us know and we'll be happy to bring that in. So let me go ahead and switch us over. So here we go. We have The Amazing Spider-Man number 38. Just a guy named Joe. And as you know, as I said from the top, this is co-creator Steve Ditko's last issue on the title. And so I had a couple notes about the cover to start with. For me, I said it's good. One of the things that you learn or find out in making comics is that a white cover typically does well. It's something you can track through sales. It pops off the stands. It helps the characters become bigger, brighter, and more visible. So that part is always good. However, there is some interesting stuff about this art that I noted. Nick, anything you want to say about the cover?
The cover was taken from interior photos, artwork, including the big Spider-Man image blown up and 3 panels on the bottom. Now, the reason why that was done was covers were done last at Marvel. And at that point, Ditko had probably already been gone. Just to finish the artwork and finish the story, and he left the cover to someone else. And that's what they did. They utilized elements from the interior, which they've done from time to time. Charlton Comics, other companies did it many times. But rarely, it happened also on the last issue of Daredevil that Wood did.
Yeah.
They took elements from there too, and occasionally other times. But they probably just didn't have, might have been deadlines. Might not have had another time to get another artist to throw a cover together. So they used what they had.
The other thing I would note is, and we'll see this as we move through the series, like as we go to the next issue next week, number 38. Obviously, if Steve Ditko is leaving here, we come up with a new artist.
Right.
For the most part, in these days of Marvel, they tried to have some form of continuity between the way one artist looked to the next artist that took over. And that would transition over time, but they tried to make that transition immediately as seamless as they could.
Sure.
So to bring in another artist on potentially fairly short notice to say, hey, I want you to draw a cover that looks like Steve Ditko drew it, that might have been really hard to try to do.
Yeah.
Again, based on deadlines and things like that.
So
So
that artist that follows him tried his best to do
yes.
that. And he already had a tryout in Daredevil.
Yes.
If you recall, a few months earlier.
Right. Yes. So John Romita is the guy who follows, and I think is very famously tied to Spider-Man because he had such a long, extensive run. But
Sure.
We'll get there. But today we're going to celebrate Steve in his last issue. So one of the things I did note about it, which I thought before I looked through it and made the connection of this was made from interior art, the large form of Spider-Man almost reminded me of what you used to see as what I called licensing material. So they would take imagery like this that you could pull out as a single image of Spider-Man and put it on lunch boxes, t-shirts, whatever. And how thick that outline is really made me feel like that was almost what today we would call clip art, right? Of Spidey and how that was done. So clearly they had this in the bag, and it's very possible. I haven't seen it. It doesn't ring a bell.
Well, they did that with the Amazing Spider-Man. For the annual, that's where the T-shirt came from.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There. Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where this probably was used again somewhere else on some sort of marketing or merchandising.
I think it was.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here, and we have page 1, and
I know it's a favorite of yours, Joe.
I'm
sorry, Jerry. No. I know you keep talking about those splash panels and that it's used, but almost everyone was doing it, especially at Marvel at that time. They had to feel like they needed a second cover. They needed to get kids interested, draw them in, and that's why they did it. I understand the time element and getting everything done, but in this instance, Ditko just did a 4-panel grid.
Yeah. No, so there's a couple of sort of mindsets to it. So we've talked about this both through messages and stuff like that. But one of the things that did certainly play a part was the way that the business worked. So when you were a retailer, you would tear off the cover, cut off the cover of a book you didn't sell, send the cover back with your order for next month's books, and you would get a credit for them. So now you have a whole bunch of old books sitting around with no cover on them. How do you let people know what book this is? So as a Marvel, I don't want these just getting pulped. Maybe this could go to somebody else. So having that splash page does work as a second cover. So that's part of it for sure. And then, of course, just the marketing of, hey, somebody picks this up and opens the cover. What's the first thing they're going to see? If it's a lot of story that they have to read to understand what's happening, maybe it turns them off. So I get it. My concern has always been just the fact that you have a very limited amount of real estate. I talk about this all the time. If anybody is following the show and the my other videos, comics have over the years decreased the number of pages in them. So you go from mid 20s to 22 to 20. So the fewer pages you have, the fewer time you have to tell a full beginning, middle, end story. Like this one is what I refer to as a one and done. This story has a beginning, middle, end. It is not part of an ongoing storyline. There are threads of storylines through it, but it isn't in and of itself a cliffhanger for next month. So you have to finish it up. So why waste a page to recreate the cover when you can jump right in like this? So I like this. The other thing I noted, and I'm going to zoom in so we can really see it, and this ties me again to other things that I've mentioned about what Steve Ditko did. His characters are unique. His characters don't all look alike, meaning this guy is one of our main antagonists. His name is Joe Smith, which what a name, Joe Smith, right? I'm sure that's a Stan name to
Oh
keep
yeah,
it
he named all
simple.
the characters.
Yeah. So come on, Stan. But anyway, the
Well, he's an
way this
average guy.
yeah, the way this guy is drawn, he has no forehead, or is he all forehead? I can't tell, right? What does that mean? Is it all forehead or no forehead?
That's a good question.
But it's crazy how his nose comes straight down from his forehead. But I guess if you're a fighter, maybe that's the way. I guess maybe that makes you a better fighter. I don't know. But again, just a real example of how when Steve created these characters, even somebody like this that we'll never see again, or his manager, they're always drawn as different and unique characters, and I love that.
Me too.
So we have Joe Smith. I noted that. So Joe is a wannabe either boxer, fighter. He in page 1 here we see he tries boxing, he tries wrestling.
Not doing too well.
Not doing well at all. All of the other athletes are just razzing the guy, and the only one who kind of believes in him at all is his manager.
Yeah.
And he gets him apart on this sci-fi TV film, this TV production. And the first thing I noticed about, as I mentioned, is the costume here. So again, I'm just going to kind of see if I can zoom in a little bit. We'll see it better later as well. But here's the costume. Something that I've always noted, and I think this is an interesting and maybe even a little ahead of its time costume, but is the colors. So Nick, you know what I'm probably going to say about the colors, but your villains are almost always, and it seems like more in Spider-Man than any other character that I can think of offhand, your characters are always in these secondary colors, especially green. And so you have that instant psychological play between your red and blue primary color Spider-Man hero and your secondary color orange and green, which is a very unsettling combination of colors. Maybe unless you just celebrated Halloween like we just did the other day.
Yeah, it is an odd pairing.
It doesn't work well, and so it makes us uncomfortable. And it again, it's all about the psychology of, as a reader, how do you feel? You don't want to like this guy necessarily. He's a villain. He's a bad guy. So you put him in something like this. And then I'll mention it. But anything that you have for these first couple pages here?
Well, as I mentioned to you offline, that I saw one of the penciled pages, and the costume was a little bit different. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But the face mask was different. I recall that, and I don't know if he changed it during the inking, before production. I don't know, but it did look different. Had a different look to it, and I found that interesting.
Yeah. Of all the things you would change, again, for a potentially a throwaway character, unless maybe, deep down, Steve thought that this guy's going to be the next whatever, but we'll see spoilers by the end of the story here. He's nothing. So it's kind of a throwaway character. So to take the time to redesign something like that on the fly while you're under deadline is very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Maybe he just didn't like the way it looked originally and made a change.
I said specifically the helmet and shoulder pads, these great big bulky shoulder pads, is something that we ended up seeing a ton in the 90s and kind of made a big comeback. So maybe again, Steve's designs just a little bit ahead of their time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I did, and I'm sure Dick, you probably do this as well, right? So for me, I know I've read all of these at one point or another, and the order of the stories sometimes get mixed up in my mind. Okay. And as I was reading this origin of this character, he's performing as this character, and there's a combination of chemicals and electricity, and it zaps him. And later we find that it confuses him, makes him aggressive, but also gives him super strength. It immediately made me think, which I couldn't remember at the time if it came before. Obviously it comes later, and that's issue number 42 with John Jameson and the space spores. So spoilers, as we'll get there in a few weeks. But the son of J. Jonah Jameson is an astronaut. We've seen him obviously in the very early issues of Spider-Man, but he comes back from a space mission. He's been exposed to some sort of spores. They make him aggressive and super strong. And this origin story kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I love the bit here. We started talking about this the last few weeks where every month Jonah gets a new secretary
Yes.
who then quits.
Every issue.
And she's
not an easy guy to work for.
Not an easy guy to work for. And they always have a different color hair. So we've had brunette, we have brown, we've had black and blonde, and now this time we have the red.
Different look every time.
Different look every time. Great running gag.
Ditko never draws the same style, the same look.
Nope.
Keeps changing.
And I wonder, so with those kinds of things in your, your knowledge, your investigation into the history of these books with Steve, is that like a running gag like that? Is that something he came up with as part of the plot, or is that something where Stan says, "Hey, I got this idea. What do you think?"
Yeah, I think it was probably all Steve's.
Okay.
Just came up with the idea, and he had Betty go, and Jameson is troublesome. So I would just say, it just made sense to him probably. Yeah, let's have different secretaries that can't deal with him, got to leave. And next month another, or next week another assistant.
I love it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a great little subplot, little piece of humor that adds to it.
Yeah, little gag there. I really like that a lot. We do see the return of Ned Leeds here as well, and some of the we're going to get kind of the end of the Betty, Peter, Ned triangle. It's kind of resolve a little bit. So it feels like we've been going for several months now of Betty Brant, Peter's first love, has left town. Ned Leeds, this reporter from the Daily Bugle, wants to marry her, but she's apparently wanted to talk to Peter. But it always bothered me that I never really liked that relationship. As a fan of Spider-Man over the years, there's some great relationships that Peter has had, very interesting ones that forward the story. And this always just felt on, off. Betty was kind of
different take on
cold.
I have a different take on it, Jerry.
Okay.
I just think it's like, his first girlfriend, his first relationship. Yeah, things are confusing, messed up, and they both have different points of view on stuff. And, she didn't know what was going on with him, what his lifestyle was like. So yeah, I can understand a little mixed feelings. They both don't know what they really want. And I thought it worked out for a first relationship, or an early relationship. I thought it worked out. I mean, it didn't work out for them, but it was a good dramatic situation,
Right.
And when she was slowly creeping out there, you knew it was not going well.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it too, that Ditko was doing, trying to introduce Gwen, the girl that Stan named Gwen Stacy, the woman that he introduced as the college person that was in school with him.
Right.
And I think it would have been, and again, it's just a theory, that Gwen would have been more aggressive, and she would have found out that Peter was Spider-Man, because I think that would have been an interesting take. And Ditko did that later on in the Blue Beetle, where he had the Blue Beetle reveal himself to the woman that he loved, and went on from there. And they worked together.
That would have been very interesting for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's clear from the beginning. We've seen Gwen Stacy now for maybe like 7 or 8 issues so far, and it's clear she's feisty, but she's also smart, right?
Yes,
that was the
smart.
idea. She's supposed to be, an intellectual equal to Peter, where maybe Betty was not.
Right.
And so that brings a more mature kind of relationship that would have been really interesting to explore further. But, again, we'll get there, and
it would have been a different take on the relationship. I'm
very,
sure.
very much. One of the things I did note as well, and this is an example, this is your classic 9 pattern grid on this page. So you can see there's a lot of dialogue going on throughout this issue. And that that's very common. We don't see any splash pages, half splash pages, big action panels. there's a lot of small grid work. Now, whether usually that's a function of pacing. We talked about it a lot on the channel here to say, hey, if you see multiple panels like that, that's because each action is happening within a moment of each other, right? It'd be like cells in a film strip. They're going boom, 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 boom.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on here. So again, just something different for us.
By the way, I like that. Peter Parker. I love that vest. I like the look, the yellow black vest. T-shirt and the shirt and a yellow vest. I like that look.
That was an interesting change. Like that really made a difference. And Steve made a point in the storyline, the plot, to say, hey, Peter needs some new clothes, and
definitely
really made a difference. I made it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. These little touches just add so much.
At the time, he makes a point where his old clothes are getting tight. And I made a point at that point of noting Steve has started drawing Spider-Man bulkier. And if you compare issue 2 or 3 to issue 30, you could see the figure has bulked up considerably. He's still thin in terms of superhero bodies, but
more muscular,
but by comparison, And I think that's one of the things that I attribute to Steve as a creator, and because you've seen it in his other characters, they evolve, they grow, they change over time.
I think he put a lot of thought into it, and from the beginning, going to gradually make this guy a little bit stronger, a little bulkier. I think he put that in his mind.
And what do you think? So we're kind of dancing around the elephant in the room a little bit, which of course, so Steve is leaving the book, and the question is why? If you're drawing Spider-Man for Marvel Comics, why would you leave?
Well, he mentioned that in an essay a number of years ago, finally. And basically, he said he got a call from production man Sal Brodsky one day, which is what was the usual. They had Stan had been talking to him for a year or so. And he just said, I need 20 pages or 21 pages for the next Spider-Man annual. And that was it. He hung up the phone and he's like, okay, I'm a freelance guy. I could be fired at any time for any reason. Should I keep going this way? He just figured I best go on.
Yeah.
And that was really, from what he said, that's what it came down to. And when I was doing the research on it, right after he left, before he left Spider-Man, I think a year before Amazing Spider-Man 32, he was already at Charlton doing the revised Captain Atom every 2 months. And then before he left, or around the time he left Marvel, he was working for Charlton, Dell, Tower, Warren, ACG. And some of these things, Creepy #9 was the first black and white that came out when Amazing Spider-Man 37 was on the stands. So he was all over the place and had a lot of accounts. So I think that speaks a lot for what he was doing. He found a lot of work. I think part of it was through, he did work with Sal Trapani, who was Dick Giordano's brother-in-law. He was an artist too, but he did a lot of, he didn't do a lot of penciling. He did a lot of inking and had people ghost pencil the stuff. So he probably gave assignments to Ditko for like Nuclear, Get Smart, Hogan's Heroes, all this stuff that was coming out. And of course, the Tower Comics, he had Wally Wood, who gave him work.
So I mean, when there's no shortage of work as a freelancer, so you're keeping your paycheck coming in.
Yeah.
And yes, Spider-Man to us, now we look at it and we say Spider-Man's the icon, but
it was an assignment. You didn't realize where it was going yet, but it's getting there. But you don't know. Right. You didn't know.
It's still relatively new. I mean, Spider-Man could have been canceled at any time. Who knew? And sales were good, but it wasn't what we think of it today. And if there is then friction between Steve and Stan, or Steve and Saul, so the editors, the publisher, whoever, why am I going to, break my neck doing this?
The next month they might say, we don't need you anymore,
Exactly.
We've got another artist to do that. If sales went down, anything going to happen. So that's the way he looked at it, I mean, he could have left a lot earlier. Well, lucky he didn't. But he could have left a lot early, as one of my friends said.
Now, this is my 2 cents. I could be way off, maybe agree, disagree. But for me, I always felt like Stan, for quite a while, wanted Peter to remain the evergreen teenager. And it seems like Steve is the guy who kind of pushed and said, I want him to grow up. He needs to evolve. He needs to grow. He needs to change.
Well, it's good, Jerry, but you got the exact opposite. Steve
I
wanted to
got it backwards.
keep him a kid.
Teenager forever.
He would have liked to keep him as a kid, but Stan, I think, early on introduced him to, why don't we do a college thing? He grows up and goes to college and everything. And Steve was hesitant. And I think I mentioned this once before, but he asked, when they weren't talking anymore, he went to Flo Steinberg, Stan's secretary, and said, does Stan still want me to have Peter graduate? And she said, I'll let you know, and the next time they met, he said, yeah. And then he did the graduation story on his own. But they had talked about it earlier, and Stan had graduation plans for a lot of the characters starting a year earlier with Patsy Walker. He had them grow up and go to college, get a job, go to work, and then Johnny Storm a year later. So I think it was all his idea. And I guess fans also put it into his mind. And but initially he did not really want to do it from what I understand. But then when he decided on it, I said, okay, let's go all out and do it this way. Yeah. He put invested a lot in it, added all these new characters, Harry Osborn and Mary Jane. And the whole college scene. Yeah.
Well, so back to the story here we go, and we see, so Peter is kind of, again, sort of going over the whole Betty Brant thing after this reaction. And then here we start to see this character, this Joe Smith, who, again, I don't know that he never comes up with a name, I don't think.
No, just Joe.
Just this guy. And he's supposed to be beating up the bad guys in a movie scene, and this reaction that he's had has made him super aggressive, and so he just kind of takes things too far, not realizing that he has this super strength. Again, something where maybe in another issue we might have seen this panel over here where he's kind of going crazy and beating up people. Maybe that might have been a little bit bigger or something like that. We've got more of kind of that grid type of layout, which rolls right into here of him breaking out to the street in his first interaction with Spidey. And so I do like the picking up of the car. I think that was a great example, a very simple way to show the strength. But this is also another great sight gag, right? So Peter's in his own head space, walking around. People are running by him like a Godzilla movie. And there's stuff coming at him, and he doesn't notice. Totally oblivious until something hits him. Now, here's my ultra nerd continuity guy hat gets on. So you go, why doesn't his spider sense warn him about these rocks flying at him? And so I'm thinking about it today, and I went, wait a minute, here's why. This is my logic behind it all. The rocks were never a danger. Nothing hit him.
Nothing was say that. Not a danger to him.
Yeah. So that's
he's lost in thought.
Right. So maybe
I have that look sometimes. Yeah, he's lost in thought and distracted. He
gets just the littlest tingle, maybe, but he's distracted by it, as opposed to it's a direct danger. So It's just, I've noted it because we've seen tons of examples where there's a lot of inconsistency at this point in the spider sense. When it works, when it doesn't, it fits in the story. Sometimes it doesn't. And I just like to try to kind of call it out sometimes when I
again, we don't know what Steve was writing down. We don't know what Stan was doing with it. And as I've said before, but those who've not watched this, heard it before, Steve Ditko not only did all the plotting and penciling at this point, but with every book he did on a separate piece of paper, instead of writing margin notes, he would write from panel to panel, like panel 1, and describe a little something or a couple of words of what's going on. So he would do that on every page. So, that doesn't mean that Stan always translated it that way. He might have changed it. So you don't know what his, we've only had 1 and 2 of these pages that we've seen. We don't know what the exact actions he described or how he described it, but Stan could have ignored it, did his own thing. And I think that happened from time to time.
Right. But that's a really good point, because, the reality is we have a lot more history and publication of Stan talking about what he calls the Marvel method, what we know of today as the Marvel method, compared to somebody like Steve explaining the Marvel method, right?
Yeah.
And that's just because Stan talked a lot, and Stan was a be nice about it. Not, I don't mean this in a negative way, a carnival barker. Stan was a hype man, is
No,
what we would
Steve
call
took
him
it very
today.
seriously. I think everything he wrote, and he wrote some
Yeah.
essays about it.
Yep.
In later years, he was very precise in his thoughts
Yes.
and what he was saying about every issue. When he was doing, he only did it up to number 4, I think. But he was describing events and what he did, what he came up with, and stuff. So I think he was very precise in what he was doing, how he wanted to do it, and I think he lost that feeling when he'd go into the office, and I heard about this in the 80s too, or 90s. He'd go in with the editor and show panel by panel what he did on the pencil stage, if they wanted any changes, if anything was they were unhappy with, suggestions. This is the way he did things. He took it very seriously,
Yep.
and he went page by page, panel by panel. This is what I'm doing. When they weren't talking to each other anymore, they didn't have that option.
Right.
He'd just get a note of something from Stan or Saul and either change it or not change it. It came out to that. There was no discussion. And he felt it was very important to discuss whatever problems or issues there were with the page or the panel.
So just in case anybody who's joining us is not familiar with what I'm talking about when I mention the Marvel method, I'll just explain very, very quickly, very high level. But basically, you would have either the artist, the writer, or both of them together sometimes would come up with a plot. So in this case, with the partnership of Steve Ditko and Stan Lee, Steve would come up with the plot. And that plot is your basic thread of a storyline. There's a bad guy. He's exposed to chemicals. He gets superpowers, goes on a rampage. Spidey fights him and eventually stops him. It's as simple as that. It's just your through line of your story, kind of what happens. Then the artist would just go off and would just draw that story, knowing I have to fill up this many pages. So they would break it into sections, draw the whole thing the way they felt that story was best told. Then the pages would get turned into the office. And in this case, as Nick just described, Steve Ditko as the artist would have a bunch of notes for the writer to go, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Peter's depressed, or Aunt May is not feeling well, or to explain what he drew. And then somebody like Stan goes, okay, I can take the images, I can take the notes, I put those together, I understand the story. Now I'm going to write these little word balloons. And that's what the writer would do, is write the word balloons, and you put it all together, and boom, you have a comic. And the reason for the Marvel method was just you had a few people doing a whole lot of books, and if you sat down and wrote a whole script for a full comic every month, you're not going to be able to produce as much as fast as possible. And so it was really an efficiency and speed issue.
Yeah, and he knew he had talented people that knew exactly what they could do. It added so much to it. I mean, Ditko always said from the beginning he worked with Stan. It was a 1 or 2 page plot synopsis,
Yep.
And he went on from there. No more, no less. And they discussed it and did things with it. So that's what it was. No more than that. And then later on, it just became solo. So.
And there are still people that work in the industry that way today. There are some people that write full scripts that you would read. It reads like a movie script with camera moves and angles and all that kind of stuff. But usually, I think the best pairing is when you have that where both sides kind of let the other one go, do your thing, bring your creativity to it. But yeah, comics are still made with that. The Marvel method is probably the most popular way of doing comics even to this day. I do want to go and just bring in again, I'm going to zoom in here because we're going to see here, we've got one of our main images from the cover here. So we've got this one over on the side. We've got Spidey ducking out of the way as the villain smashes into the car. And that's one of our cover images that they pulled for that. I did also note in my notes that I really liked about this, and I've noted this in other about Steve and what he did with these pages. What I call his choreography is impeccable. So what I mean by that is these are all still images of a moving sequence of events. And we're picking specific images to represent this fight here, right? But what he did was when Spidey comes across with a right hand and punches the guy, this guy's right hand is also cocked back, ready to punch back. And that's exactly what he does. Other artists might have drawn him throwing a kick in the next panel or punching with the left hand. Steve set it all up so that as he's, so going even to the first panel, he's ripping the webbing apart. And when you see him again, the webbing he's not done with it. He's still in his hands. He's still pulling it apart. So you have that continuity of choreography is the phrase that I've used. I don't know if that's a real phrase, but that's what I call it. And it really does help sell in this grid format, that moment to moment. You don't get lost in where we are. We don't get turned around. Why are they facing the other direction? It's all very consistent. And
he's setting it up well.
It's something that Steve did, obviously early on as one of the earliest Marvel artists, better than anybody else. And, even Jack Kirby, the King, sometimes kind of went from big action to big action. And sometimes you need that in between to help sell it.
Sure. No, he was great at doing the what you call storyboards, putting it all together and designing it so well and setting up kind of like, Alfred Hitchcock used to do the storyboards and his movie. Set it up and he had everything planned out.
That is a great analogy of storyboards. So if anybody's familiar with how they used to visualize movies before computers, and I'm sure people still do it today, but the idea is you'd have little illustrations that would show you moment to moment, and then you film everything in between and make it a consistent film.
Certainly.
So Spidey gets the short end of the stick here for a minute, and this guy, as his powers kind of off and on, or his mental acuity is off and on, now they run away. So now we're cutting to a slightly different scene. But I did find this interesting. This is something that I think happens a lot sometimes. And this I chalk up to the coloring. So we're here. It's obviously an outdoor cityscape. We see this kind of greenish building behind Spidey. There's cars. He's leaped over a car and he's sticking to the wall. And now when we come to the next page, it tells us, if you glossed over this and didn't see that it says at another moment in another part of town, it looks like the same part of town.
Right.
It could be the same building. This could have been the car Spidey bounced off of, but it doesn't impact the story that much. But for me, again, it's a small editing thing that I would like to say, hey, why don't we color that background a little different?
Sure.
Just, my 2 cents. But this is one of those plot threads that's kind of going through that isn't relevant to the story itself per se, but something that is feeding along the greater storyline. And that is, we have Norman Osborn, we have Harry Osborn and Flash Thompson. And Norman is, as we saw in the I'm trying to think. Was it the previous issue or the issue before?
I think the last issue.
It was the last issue where hit Professor Strom. Yes.
Yeah. Father and son were together.
Yes. And Norman notes specifically that Spider-Man is going to become a real pain in his rear if he doesn't do something about it. So we don't know what, and we don't know why. But again, I did note every time we've seen Norman Osborn, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's always in a green suit. And we know what green means, right? So it does mean something. So here he puts on a disguise and he goes to some underworld contacts and he sort of puts out a hit on Spider-Man, basically. But I loved this. And again, I go, why was this? Who thought up this idea? He literally, instead of like, I'll pay you half up front and half when you're done, he cuts the money in half physically. It goes, here, then I'll give you the other half of it. And I guess you could tape them together. Like, what a weird way of making sure you get your money's worth. I've never seen or heard anybody do anything like that before.
It's been done elsewhere. I don't remember movies or somewhere. It's a trope at that point.
But that made me laugh. I was like, I can't say I've heard that. And then I get, it's funny, right? So this issue was 66.
66. It came out in like early 66, I believe. Ditko left in like November of 65, turned it in.
So here we go, almost 60 years later to the day, and it's all about, there's a scene about college protesting. And they're protesting to protest the other protest. And I went, wow, how times don't seem to change, I guess. So I thought that was a very cute commentary on society at the time. Pete wants nothing to do with it. He's got bigger problems.
And Stan wanted nothing to do with it later on because the people mentioned it and took it seriously. And he was, no, we're just joking around. He didn't want to offend anybody. So he basically said, no, that was a joke. But Ditko didn't take it as a joke if you see the artwork. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's some very fired up people. People are taking it very serious. And then on both sides, you can see how angry Harry and Flash are. That they think Peter is with the protesters, and and the other side, he's leaving, and the protesters are angry with him. So Pete gets it from both sides all the time.
Of course,
that's the deal. But great depictions here of these characters. Of course, we see Gwen as well, and she still is having that. She doesn't know what to make of Peter. There's definitely an attraction, and she likes what she sees, but she at the same time.
She's trying to put it all together.
Yeah. Exactly. But I really like this fourth panel again. I'm going to zoom in here. I really noted that again of these faces, which are incredible.
That's great,
where you have Harry and Flash and Gwen all cramped into this little panel.
Yeah, it works.
But it works because they're intense, and when you have those close-ups like that, from an artistic standpoint, it makes you uncomfortable as a reader because now they're in your face.
And just the close up there. I mean, they're all in there and what they're staring at, their emotions. It's great.
It's one of the things that, again, that Steve does very well. I've noted a couple times where when he wants, he's using the art to manipulate the reader's emotions. That's what we're doing as storytellers. That's the whole goal. And here, these people aren't looking at Peter. We're not looking over at their shoulder and they're seeing Peter. They're looking at us. It's almost, you almost feel like they're angry at us as the reader. And and that's a great job. I mean, to be able to do that with four colors and black and white lines, that's amazing.
True.
So again, just some more kind of through story, nothing terribly exciting. The Joe Smith is kind of resting before his next rampage. The crooks are now going to try to get onto to Spidey. Peter's again always in his own head because that's where he's at.
The crook in panel 5 looks very much like a character actor. Ditko used them as reference, and I think
this guy here,
that's a character actor, a big bad guy. Yes, that would play the villainous parts.
He does. Yeah, I can't place it either, but that mustache, reminds me a little bit of, oh gosh, what is his name? Jackie Gleason, the Jackie Gleason little mustache. But Spidey is, he's looking, he's like, hey, I'm just gonna get out, clear my head a little bit, and now he gets jumped by a bunch of these everyday thugs, which is no problem for Spidey, of course. And here his spider sense works out perfectly. And I did love this. This is one of the things, again, we're obviously singing the praises of Steve Ditko as a storyteller here, but why? I mean, this is the whole point. And having Spider-Man run along the wall to punch a guy who's hiding around the corner, there's no other hero that can do that.
No, that's a great...
Right? Yeah. Batman can't run along the wall like that. And so to use not just Spidey's powers when he needs powers, but he uses them as just his natural way of moving.
Effortlessly. Yeah, definitely.
Really neat. And again,
just it's unique to that character. Yeah.
It really is. And again, also to the way that Steve depicted him, I think, not everybody would remember that to go, hey, by the way, Spidey can stick to walls even if he doesn't need to. He just likes to.
Just with the feet. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we have Joe down here. So he's up from his nap and he's still feeling a little woozy. And he's got that great, just flat face of a boxer, I guess. And he's getting he's getting fired up again. He should have been better. He should have been a champion. So he's getting all riled up, and he's going to go on another rampage. So Spidey is dealing with the crooks in his own Spidey way. And again, this is another scenario where I mentioned, lots and lots of panels here, but in the past we might have seen in a change of the scenery, a bigger panel helps you break up that pacing of the story, the storytelling. We don't see it, but this should look familiar to everybody because
that's the cover image. Yep.
That's your big cover image right there. Exactly. So that's the big one. I really like this flipping panel here a lot, where he's sort of, I'll scroll down. He's flipping and punching the guy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Great use of shadow, and one of the beauty things that I've always said, Spidey's costume is so recognizable, you don't even have to see his face.
No,
you know exactly who it is. There's no confusion. This is terrific, and I think we'll see it later here. I pointed out later, but when Spidey is doing this, when Peter and Spider-Man is jumping around and flipping around, this is him just having fun. That's my opinion. He could just stand strong and just wipe the floor with these guys. We know
he's constantly moving.
He's constantly jumping, moving, flipping, and part of it, I think he just enjoys. These are the times he enjoys being Spider-Man, right? I will say this about one thing. This is something that I bring up a lot. This piece right here, it's very, very subtle, but where the leg lines up with the panel border, that's typically what you would say is a big no-no. That's a tangent. So you never want your characters to sit on the panel border, either on the top or the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks the illusion that you're looking through a frame at something that's happening behind. And even though it's very subtle, what you could do, which would really help emphasize the action and the emotion, is you have Spidey's foot just break the border up there.
Could do that, yeah.
And that's something you would see probably in later issues, more modern issues. I think in these, they seldom broke the plane. It was not something they used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something you would probably see if somebody was telling the same story today. So just wanted to point that out. And then the guy, Joe, goes back to the gym where the guys were making fun of him, and he starts wiping the floor with those guys. Spidey hears the commotion, so he's really giving him the business. And so he's like, okay, there's the guy. And
I like that panel on the panel 6 on that, where he's looking in.
The shadow as he's looking in through the window.
A nice shot.
It is. I really like that as well. It's always hard. So I have drawn Spider-Man a bunch over the years. As my favorite character, I love to draw Spider-Man. Spider-Man was my day 31 entry for Inktober this year.
Nice.
But one of the things that is a struggle is, how do you draw shadows on Spider-Man's costume? The blue part is easy. How do you draw shadows on the red part without taking away and just blacking out the web pattern, which is so much of the costume? So here, this is great. So what he's done here is all the light is coming from the window. So there's just that halo silhouette.
Right.
And we can see it through there. So that's a great way to do it. Other people, what they'll do, and I think Steve has done this at several times, they'll shade inside of the web pattern. So you're essentially making the web pattern red, and the inside of those little scallop areas is black. So that's another way to shade that's very dynamic. So this is a great way to handle it, but something that's not easy. If you don't draw Spider-Man a lot, it can be a challenge because you can't shade him the way you do other characters.
No.
And then up on the top of the page here, we have another cover image. I believe that is that's number 4. So that's our 4th cover image that we have that they pulled, is Spidey leaping down into the melee. And again, I just noted in my notes, again, great choreography of how it's going from Spidey flipping and kicking 2 guys to being punched while he's upside down like that is a great continuation of that movement. So really like the choreography on this page in the fight. I think it's terrific.
Yeah.
And then here we go. We talked about this a little bit. Here is the page of sound effects.
Yeah, something
So
Steve didn't like.
something that Steve didn't like. So Nick, you
And he
told
just
me
goes
that.
all out and stand in this panel. Every panel is a huge sound effect.
Yep.
So
And so traditionally there's for viewers, if you're not familiar with, again, how comics are made, there's a couple of ways that sound effects get onto a page like this. One, and probably this way, is the letterer. So the art is provided with no sound effects, and the letterer goes in and adds them just like they would the word balloons. Um, or sometimes some artists will draw the sound effects directly on the page as part of that composition. So, what Nick has informed me and educated me on is the fact that Stan liked them, but Steve didn't. So, this would have probably been drawn with the concept maybe of there's full dialogue here, but Stan just said, you know what? I like sound effects. Let's have another big sound effects hullabaloo. And told the letterer to do it, and that's how that worked, right? That was
he might
the
even penciled it out lightly and then
could
have
have,
Artie
yeah,
Simic finish it off.
yeah,
But just put the words in and then have the Artie Simic do it before it was inked.
yeah,
So pencils later than ink. So
yeah,
that's how it worked.
yeah,
Coloring was last.
yes, absolutely. But it is good. It's good
So
camera
Ditko
work
would
here.
see this while he was inking it
Just
and not
grinding
be
his
too
teeth.
pleased, I'm sure. It's like, okay, here it is
Stan.
again.
All right. But great camera work to move the camera around from low shot to high shot, move from profile to straight on. So again, beautiful artistry in a kind of contained form um, of getting all that action and motion in. Again, you think about, so do you know, I'm sure you do, what size were these pages drawn at?
Good question.
Today it's 11 by
17, I
17
think.
in a 10 and a half by 15 area. So anything
Right.
inside of your borders here is 10 by 15.
Right.
I didn't know if Steve drew oversized or not. I know some artists.
Well, they
did.
were all drawing the same size at that time. They got
Okay.
the artboards from Marvel, I believe, and it was all, I believe, 11 by 17. They got smaller like a year or so later.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they changed. But
Yep.
at that point, it was all Kirby, Ditko,
Right.
Cole, and everybody was using the same artboard. So
there's some artists, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head right away to say, but some people drew twice up. So they would draw on 22 by 34 pages. And you had obviously a lot more space to get more detail and stuff like that. And so when it was shrunk down, it was really unique, very what's the word I'm looking for? Ornate was what I was trying to get to.
Ditko, I know, liked using the larger artboards.
Yeah.
Put more detail into it. He did like it even into later years when they weren't doing once in a while. He'd get to do that.
Yeah, but you have to find a printer that wants to work off that, which is, a whole different scenario. So it's something that's really cool if you see it. It's something I'd love to do someday myself to try it, but it's tough. It's tough to find.
And these first three panels have more special effects.
More sound effects, more
1,
bang.
2, 3, 4. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Stan was not going to give up without a fight, apparently. But Spidey punches the craziness out of Joe. And again, we see this beautiful, beautiful profile of Joe here. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who, Joe Frank, who's a great aficionado of comics, knows a lot of stuff. I was asking him about this issue, and he said to me, "This is what he wrote to me." He said, "I didn't see Joe Smith as good or evil, more confused under trying circumstances. To me, he was a parallel to Peter." The victim of an accident and a mocked outsider to those who know him. Someone who wants to be accepted or admired, but has nothing but heartache and problems. Up until the end, when, surprisingly, things work out ideally for Joe. A great contrast to Peter's bad breaks and ongoing concerns.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I never thought of it, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
He's the nobody. He becomes a somebody, or at least 15 minutes of fame when he goes into acting, right?
Right.
Or perform. But what did he do? How did he become famous? By getting this accident.
By an accident, yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're a star.
Right. Right.
Here, you could go on this TV show. I guess he's on Lost in Space or whatever show he's on. And all of a sudden he gets much work and fame.
Yeah. So here we go. This is exactly so. Things slow down, and everybody loves what you're doing, and they're going to hire you on, and they're going to hire
Those
me
are great
on.
faces too in panel 2.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Him and the manager. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The teary eyes. Oh, he's unbelievable. And
everybody loves him now. They're cheering him. Like that guy in panel 3.
Yep.
With the hair and the mug. Wow.
And the cauliflower ear.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
Love
a
him.
boxer.
And so, I mean, right. And where did Peter get his start after his accident? In showbiz.
Yeah.
And things went wrong. And here he is struggling. And we see that here in the end. But, yeah. And here's a guy, if it wasn't for the burglar, maybe this is Peter, who knows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting insight. I had never put that together. I love this. So what I noted here compared, and this is why I made such a big point of Peter having fun flipping around, even though there's guys with guns trying to kill him, he's flipping and jumping and quipping and da. And now he's mad. He's really upset about this. And like you said, he can't get the breaks or whatever. And here comes a bunch of guys who are like, we're going to get $20,000 to take you out. And he's like, $20,000? I'd off myself for $20,000. You kidding me? And there's no more until the end. There's no more quipping. There's no more flipping. Peter sets his feet and just takes these dudes out. And it reminds you sometimes, every once in a while, you see it in these issues. Spider-Man is not to be trifled with. This dude has a lot of power if he wants to let go, and it's only his innate goodness that stops him from letting go. And that's what makes Peter and Spider-Man such a hero.
Sure.
So I like that element. And then he sees this, I guess it's like some sort of dummy. It's supposed to be like a window dummy, but he thinks it reminds him of Ned Leeds, and he's all, this is his frustration, is that he can't, even though he was interested in Betty, he can't ever be with her because Spider-Man's between them, right? So again, just sort of emphasizing this guy, this Joe, had an accident. He has this crazy alter ego that goes nuts, beats people up, and they all love him. Peter goes, saves the day over and over and over again, and can't even have the girl that he loves. So very tough.
Who's in that last panel,
though? Great. Yes. Who do we have?
Who shows up in Ditko's last
who sort of shows
appearance in shadow, of course.
Yes. So we have Miss Mary Jane Watson again in shadow. So we've had a few of these kind of blink and you'll miss it views of Mary Jane, always her face obscured by something in the foreground, a potted plant, or I think it's a vase of flowers, a handkerchief over her head, in this case, some tree limbs. So she keeps trying to come by and meet Peter and just keeps missing her. And there she is driving off.
I love the first appearance of her and in shadow, and the reaction of Liz and Betty that's all you need, those looks were incredible,
Yes.
That's Mary Jane. It was great.
Though that is a great bit for sure. And again, it all wraps up with Peter hearing how wonderful Joe Smith has this unbelievable contract. He's going to be superstar. And Peter walks away depressed and bummed out, as we see him in many, many, many issues of this scene of Peter slowly walking away depressed. There's your trope of how you end up the story, and that's it. And there we have the rest of the issue. So I'll come back.
One thing I'd say about the issue, and I just bring this up because I was thinking about it recently, looking it over. I think that some of the inks were a bit rushed by Ditko, and one of the reasons, and Ditko stated this a couple of times, it's penciled, gets lettered, then it gets inked.
Right.
So it's sent to him late. And he said a lot of times things were sent a lot later than it should have been. And he finished it a couple of weeks past. So while he was doing that, he might have had these assignments at other companies, and he had to finish that off. So that might have been why it looked a bit rushed in some cases. That was my thought on it. I don't know.
It's a perfectly reasonable explanation, and I agree with you. The art, I think, is a little rough in areas. There's scenes where you would normally see detail that he wasn't including. Some of the facial features and things, the lines were there where you're like, there's no line weight, meaning because I'm assuming he was inking everything with a brush at that point. And so with a brush, you can do a thick to thin line or thin to thick using the pressure on the brush. And a lot of this had what in today's world we call deadline, which is just a line that's one consistent thickness through, which is unusual. He usually seemed to take as much care, if not more, in his inking as he did with every other aspect.
Yeah, even if you compare it to last issue.
Yes. Yeah.
You'll see a difference.
Absolutely.
And I get the feeling that maybe there was a rush that had to get done. There was other work to be done. And this was sent to him late and had to be inked and finished. So he completed his work. He always was a responsible guy. Yep. Always got the work done. And I think that's probably what it was. I'm guessing.
I think any of us too, if you're on the way out somewhere at a job or something, it's, is it human nature? Are you focused as hard on that as whatever?
Like I said, he was at Charlton at the time. He was at Dell. He was also starting to do Charlton's Ghost. He had Ghostly Tales. He was starting to do the Ghost comics. Wow. Around that time they came out. So I just noticed Ghostly. I thought that came out later, but I marked down over here. Ghostly Tales came out the same time as Amazing Spider-Man 37. So he was already doing stuff for Charlton and for all these other companies.
So again, for anybody who watches this who isn't intimate with how comic books are made, so typically you have 22 days in a month as an artist to create your comic. So as you mentioned, and the work is broken up usually between individuals. So first you have your writers are writing your script, coming up with your plot. We talked about that. Your pencilers penciling all 22 pages. So you're working about a page a day. That's a normal rate of work for any professional comic artist today.
Unless you're Jack Kirby.
Unless you're Jack Kirby or you're John Byrne.
3 or 4 pages a day. Yeah.
And yeah. Now, the way you do that is you have to work really fast. You have to be able to visualize it completely with no mistakes. And that's one of the things that Jack was known was, how do you get faster? Throw away your eraser. Just go. But it's difficult to do. And then to turn around and, as you mentioned, do the lettering. So now the letterer has it for a certain amount of time, and then they're giving you back the pages. So it's all happening at the same time. So you might be penciling, say, page 18, and then if the inker, now in this case, the inker is the same guy. So he's penciling page 18. He gets the letters for page 4. Now he's got to also ink in the same day and work other jobs. That's crazy. I mean, he had to be putting in 12, 14, 16-hour days. Easy. Yeah. I mean,
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So you think, comics are not, it's a labor of love. If you are engaged in making comics, it is hard physical work. You're sitting down, yes, but you are sitting in an uncomfortable position, hunched over. We all get carpal tunnel and back and neck problems.
The amount of effort has to be done with inking. It's a rush usually because you got to get it done quickly. Ditko was called in to ink a lot of times because, it was needed. And he'd be taking off something else and say, do this. He inked Kirby, he inked other guys, but I think he stopped after a while because it's just too much. Because it's last minute stuff. I'm like you said, I'm inking Doctor Strange, whatever. Now I got to finish this. It's not easy. It's not easy.
And then every once in a while, like you said, you get a call. Hey, we need a cover. The guy who was going to do the cover, he's sick, and I need a cover in 2 days. Okay, and now you got to drop what you're doing and draw something else, and that happened a lot.
It's a lot of deadlines, a lot of things that have to get done quickly, very quickly. It's a business.
Yep. And so that's where you started to see eventually what they had was they would start to get people who wanted to get into the business, and they would give them a test script that had been just sort
Right.
of put to the side, and they would go, great, do this pencil. How fast can you turn this job around? And these young artists would draw it and go, here you go. And they go, great. And they put it in a filing cabinet. And when the artist said, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not going to hit the deadline, I can't make it, they take the thing that's already done, and here's your fill-in issue. And that's why sometimes all of a sudden in the middle of a storyline, you get this weird little one issue story that, why is that happening?
Yeah, and it could happen with a book when there's deadlines problems. You have different artists filling in, helping out. So one page is by this guy, one page is by another person, one page is by another person. Anchors are different. That happened a lot in the 70s and 80s too.
Yes.
A different company, especially Marvel. I look at some of the credits, I'm like, wow, wait a second. Diverse hands, and you have to try to figure out who did what. Oh, Chick Stone did this, Al Milgrom did this. You know, it was a process.
That happened, and all the way into the 90s when you started to have the Image guys where they built studios and stuff, and you just had a revision of the bullpen where they would just have 5 or 6 inkers, and pencilers were like, here you go, and they would just sort of distribute them, and you might have 5 or 6 different inkers across a book to get it done in time because they were trying to put out as much product as possible.
Well, when we get to the Romita era, I'll tell you about what help he got. That's documented, like a number 42, but I'll save it for that.
Excellent.
I wrote about it years ago, and have an interview from one of the earliest interviews he did at one of the fanzines. I had an issue of it, and it tells you quite a little bit about Spider-Man too. Basically, when we get to it, like next issue, so I'll mention what he had to say about the Goblin. About the identity of the Goblin and how it had to be that person. There was no other guesswork or whatever. This is why we had to do it.
Gotcha. Well, I am really looking forward to that. And again, so everybody, we are heading into a new era here as we start next week. The new artist on Spider-Man is John Romita Sr., who has a very extended run on the book. And eventually at one point, even his son, John Romita Jr. has a very extended run on Amazing Spider-Man, a couple runs, in fact.
And at that time, he was drawing Daredevil.
Yep.
And only for a few issues, but he always said he would have loved to do an extended run of the title and see where it would have taken him. Yeah. That would have been interesting.
Very.
Because he always felt a little confined with this because it wasn't his. And at least Daredevil pretty much was open at that point. There wasn't many people. Bollywood, obviously, Joe Orlando, Bill Everett.
But they didn't have... no one person had the extended run that you had here with
Wood
Steve
was distinctive, and he added the costume, and other things. But he felt he could have done more with that because he was more open to newness, more of a newer character. Spider-Man at this point was pretty established, even though he was young.
So, well, Nick, thank you so much for enjoying and going through this issue with me. I had a great time.
He always does an interesting. You always do a great, interesting, and makes me think about the books itself. I mean, when you were talking about number 32 a few weeks back, and I just said, "Oh, yeah, I didn't get that point before." When you were saying how he made his own errors, and I'm sure Ditko put that into his mind. Well, why did he do all this stuff? Why didn't he handle Dr. Octopus in a different way? Everything was emotion, was energy, was anger, and how did he get into that problem? You're right. It made a lot of sense.
That was the theme. And I appreciate it. I love these issues. I love the character. I love the artists who were involved in it. It's obviously a big part of my life. It's been a big part of your life. So again, thank you for being here with me on this very special issue to go over it. I'll give you one last thing, everybody. So I usually give a ranking out of 10 on this one. We talked about there's some issues there. Overall, as a story, it's okay. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. It's other than it being Steve's last issue, is it a memorable one? The bad guy doesn't even have a name other than Joe Smith. So that tells you all you need to know.
Yes. It was an unusual issue.
It was
different from the rest. You didn't bring back a returning a villain. You didn't go in another direction. You just came up with this character that was offbeat.
Very little through line of the plot of what's going on with his college
Oh yeah, didn't do much.
classmates. Not much there. We saw Ned Leeds for like a page.
Well, you
to
still
talk about
squeezed in a few
Betty.
things. So if he would have been back, he would have added to that. But you had Harry, Norman Osborn, you had Mary Jane for a second, Aunt May,
Yeah.
Jameson, a little few tidbits there.
Yeah. So it was there, but anyway, that was just my thoughts. But again, thank you to everybody who watches the video. Don't forget to subscribe here to, if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel. We put out this new Spider-Man videos every Monday at 8 a.m. So make sure you set your notifications so you're aware of when the next one comes out.
And if you haven't seen any of them yet, you have 40 issues to go through.
Exactly. So we also have everything's here on a playlist. So you can check out those videos going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15. Plus, I have other videos that talk about my artwork, tips and tricks that I use in terms of tools, techniques, all the stuff that I do to make my own comics. So if you're an aspiring artist, maybe you want to check those out as well. There we go. Whoop. I hit the wrong mouse button. Yeah. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week for another Spider-Man video. Thanks so much.